right, we're recording, right? Hi, this is Rabbi Kolakowski once again. I don't know if you can see so well. I'm not going to even try looking at the camera here. I'm just driving. I know the sun's pretty bright. There we go. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I've been hearing a lot this morning about Mike Pompeo at AIPAC. And this morning on the Hewitt show, he was interviewing two filmmakers who were talking about a film that they're trying to produce called Hope in the Holy Land. Christian filmmakers who were discussing they said, one of them, he said, as a Christian, it was natural for him to love the Jewish people. But he had to work on loving the Palestinian people. And if all people are God's people, there had to be that love for both, and that you can have a place in your heart for both peoples, and it's not a contradiction. And obviously his opinion as a Christian is that Christianity is the answer for that. But and we definitely need friends, and I do not doubt the friendship of Christians. I'm not one of those cynical people who say, well, they just want to bring the end times, they want us all to die, and there'll only be those 144,000 Jews, and mentioned in Revelation and all these things, and everybody else is going to die, and other things that you hear. I truly do believe that these people are our friends. But with that being said, there's a simplicity that for years I've been saying we have to reach out. Torah Jews have to reach out to people I certainly believe that what's his name? John Hagee is a friend of the Jewish people. I know some people will say, oh no, he's actually an anti-Semite. And that no, I do believe that John Hagee is a friend of the Jewish people. But he's getting the wrong information, or he's getting only one side of the story. And the same thing here. It seems like, people make it just a simplistic issue of the Israelis slash the Jews and the Arabs slash the Palestinians, and that's what there is. There's these two views, and they oppose each other, and there has to be some way to find peace. And obviously, and I don't blame, if someone's a Christian, obviously they should believe in their faith and so forth, and many Christians believe that Christianity will be the answer to all of that. Obviously, I'm not a Christian, I'm an ultra-Orthodox Jew, for lack of a better term. I just consider myself a plain old Jew, a Torah Jew. But people would label me as ultra-Orthodox, perhaps Hasidic, even though I consider myself more of the classical Hungarian with some Hasidic customs, as opposed to the more traditional Hasidic, which is more radical in a sense whereas in a sense, really the Hungarian approach is more traditional, almost pre-Hasidic. When you learn, what Ashkenaz was like before Shabtai Tzvi, before it was. You would see it as Chassidish. What you see today in Satmar and Babov is what, in many senses, what you would see in Germany, 600 years ago, 500 years ago, 600 years ago. It was only after the Shabtai Tzvi debacle that things went so cold. You learn the Chavos Yorer. You see, even though he says, Kabbalah is not for the Hamonam, but he says the Zohar is. The type of approach to Kabbalah that you see in the Hasidic communities today was the approach to Kabbalah of the Gedolei Yisrael before a lot of the issues came up. And then things went so radically in the opposite direction and then they went radically in another direction, and so forth. And that's the point that I'm bringing out here, is that there's a tremendous amount of diversity in Judaism. There's a tremendous amount of diversity in Orthodox Judaism. And a lot of these things have to be looked at from a historical lens. And to hear Mike Pompeo say that the seeds of Zionism were planted in the Old Testament, and they were watered by, I can't even repeat, by heretics, by atheists, by Marxists, like Herzl and Ben Gurion. It's so crazy to say such a thing. And it's also ignorant of history, and somehow linking the Jewish people to these wicked men like Ben Gurion and Herzl, people who hated Judaism, who hated the Jewish people. Herzl, who wanted all Jews to convert to Christianity, and saw Zionism as the second best, and still throughout his life practiced Christian practices. He did not circumcise his children. He had a Christmas tree in his house. He taught his children Christian prayers. All due respect to Christianity, it's a different religion. I have no problem with Christianity as long as it's, labeled as Christianity. But Zionism, it's the roots. Even though Herzl was not actually the founder of Zionism, the actual founder of Zionism was Nathan Birnbaum, who later became the biggest anti-Zionist. He became a Baal Tshuva. When he founded Zionism, he was an atheist, but it was Herzl who, really took it off. But why do the revisionist historians forget about Nathan Birnbaum? Because he later became a Baal Tshuva and became one of the biggest anti-Zionists. And not only that, but he was a very strong spiritual powerhouse, Nathan Birnbaum, with the whole idea of a Kiruv movement long before there was such a musak, such an idea. And not only that, but to revitalize the Orthodox communities, and to bring Hasidic spirituality into the general Orthodox world, which is happening today. And it's totally different. He pushed, we have to have a Shalashudas every week in the shul, and sing Zmiris, and the way the Hasidim do, he said that they should be doing that in Germany and Lithuania and in America and everywhere. That was Nathan Birnbaum. And what do you speak about? Tiferes, and I don't know, there were different things. He had the whole ideas, and he was a powerhouse, spiritual powerhouse, Nathan Birnbaum. And he was actually the actual founder of Zionism, and he and later became one of the biggest anti-Zionists. And yet people just assume, outside the Jewish world particularly, that's what there is. There's that there's the Jews and the Palestinians, and that somehow Israel represents the Jewish people. I mean, and I'll make it clear, I support President Trump very highly, and I support Mike Pompeo, and I support the work that these people are doing. And I'm not anti-Israel, and I'm not really essentially, in the sense, pro-Palestinian in the political sense. Although certainly I agree that we have to treat all human beings with respect, and recognize that all people of all races and all religions are made in the image of God. That goes without saying, but sometimes it's unfortunate that we have to say these things. But the only thing that ever upset me that President Trump has said in his presidency was at last year's Hanukkah party, when he said about Israel, and he said, "Your country." And the thing is, I'm an American, and I'm a Jew, and America is my country. The Holy Land that Israel is currently occupying is my Holy Land. but I have no political connections to Israel. It was interesting, while I was listening to radio, I learned Gemara on the phone. I'm learning now Gemara Shkolim, which quotes Mishnah and Kalim. Which speaks to Esther Kedushas, that there are 10 levels of holiness. And it starts out with Eretz Yisrael, Kodesh Mikol Haratzos. The land of Israel is the holiest of all lands. Umahi Kedushasa. What is the holiness of the Holy Land? Is it the IDF? Is it the Hatikva? Is it falafel? Is it the blue and white flag? Is it Ben Gurion? Is it Herzl? No, of course not. Is it some spiritual feeling we have the Holy Land? Shlomo Carlebach playing his guitar and Meir Kahana, having a rally? No. The holiness of Eretz Yisrael is a legal definition that certain offerings, the Shtei Alechem and the Omer and the Shtei Alechem, those offerings, the bread on Pentecost and the Omer on the second Omer offering on the second day of Passover, that those offerings, which were made of barley and wheat and so forth, the Omer was barley and the Shtei Alechem was wheat, that wheat and barley had to have grown in the Holy Land. It can't come from any other land. And that's the holiness of the Holy Land. It's a very simple legal thing. Does not apply today. We look forward to, and then times when there will be temple and Messiah and so forth. Eventually, those things, then it'll be restored. Well, there's a medrash, although we don't paskin like a medrash, but the medrash says that Jerusalem will be as big as the Holy Land is today, and the Holy Land will be as big as the whole world today. And I don't think that means that the whole world will be bigger, but rather that the whole world will be holy, and you could bring Omer Shtei Alechem perhaps from the whole world when there's the ultimate world peace, like we were talking about yesterday. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon had to build a temple. The Bible tells us that. Why? Because Nathan said to David that because you're a man of blood, you're a man of war, you cannot build a temple. How could anyone imagine that this state of Israel, with 70 years of wars, bloodshed, terrorism, could possibly build the holy temple that's supposed to last for 1,000 years, for a millennium, with a new heaven and new earth? Are you out of your mind? To think that if David, the holy King David, couldn't build a temple, yet David Ben Gurion's going to build a temple, yet Bibi Netanyahu is going to build a temple. Are you out of your mind? Unless, of course, it's like the Christians talk about the tribulation temple. The fact is that Tzaddikim, the Heilige Rishon, are taught the same thing. In the Hasidic tradition, we have that there would also be the Holy Rabbi Yisrael of Rizhin taught that there would be a tribulation temple. He didn't use that word, but there would be a false temple with a false Messiah, meaning anti-Messiah, anti-Christ. Again, anti-Christ doesn't mean anti-Jesus. It means anti-Messiah. Whoever the real Messiah is, anti-Christ means anti-Messiah. And the Talmud says clearly, Ein ben David bach, tichlus malchus eslus b'Yisrael. The son of David, meaning the Messiah, will not come until the least amount of government ceases among Israel, meaning there can be no Jewish state. And so the existence of the Zionist state is, by definition, antichrist, according to the Jewish Talmud. I don't mean it's the personal antichrist, which again, we mentioned before, in some Jewish texts, there is a mention of a character named, in a legend of Armilus Arosha, the wicked Armilus, coming from Rome, and some of the commentaries says that Mashakar and Balaz Antichrist, that this is the one that's called in foreign languages the Antichrist. That is part of our mythology, part of the Jewish eschatology in some forms. Again, since I would consider it to be in a mythological sense, it could be literal, could not be literal. We don't know. But a lot of these things have to be considered. But there's bigger issues here. And I wish that these fine young men who made this movie, Hope in the Holy Land, I don't know who they interviewed. But I wish it wasn't just the Zionist Israelis and the quote-unquote anti-Zionist Palestinians. I wish they would have gone into Meir Sharim and talked to people from the Eda Chareidis or even from the Torah Karta, even though I'm not a fan of a lot of the things in the Torah Karta do, but maybe they would explain the ideology somewhere. That, look at the book, when you say the Torah Karta, the Yerushalmi the Torah Karta tend to be more mainstream. There's the extremists in the Torah Karta who are pretty much disowned by the mainstream. The word the Torah Karta doesn't, the term, the two words, doesn't mean just one group. But it's been stigmatized. But you talk about being in the Israeli army, men and women going to the army. That's the opposite of the biblical values. I mean, Rabbi Victor Miller used to talk about this all the time. There's only one other country that drafts women is North Korea. I mean, how does Israel feel being lumped together in a category with only one other country, North Korea? It's disgusting. And it's evil. It serves the purpose of immorality. And it's plain, and to do that of all places in the palace of the king in God's own holy land. You want to be immoral, you want to be sinful, so go to Nevada. But leave us alone in the Holy Land. Why were Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed when Egypt wasn't destroyed? Egypt, they did the same things. But Sodom and Gomorrah was in the Holy Land. The Holy Land can't handle that stuff. So you're desecrating the Holy Land. The point where the Chidah says that really the Daled Amos around these wicked people loses the holiness of the Holy Land, that the land spits them out. Scripture says that if we don't see it physically that they're forced out of the Holy Land, we could at least say that those 4 cubits around these wicked people is not the Holy Land. And Reb Nachman Breslover said that in Ukraine and Mezhbrizh by the oil of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, it is the Holy Land, and really all the Kivrei Tzaddikim have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. And in a certain sense, any Jewish community, you go into a place like Kiryas Joel or New Square, you're going into a certain level of Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Not halachically, perhaps, but in a certain spiritual sense, the Sfarim talk about this. And to the point where, once Reb Moshe Wolfson went to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, I smell on you the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Were you just in Eretz Yisrael? He said, no. He said, well, where were you? He said, well, I was in New Square. He said, well, so you were in Eretz Yisrael. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that. I'm not a Lubavitcher Chassid, but this is what he said. But in a bigger sense, the whole idea, the Talmud says, it says in the Bible, in the Song of Solomon, I'm making you swear, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not arouse, do not awaken my love before I desire. It's an oath, and it says a few times. So the rabbis tell us that this means that we're not allowed to arouse the love of the Holy Land before God desires. We have to wait patiently till the Messiah comes before we go back and study the Holy Land in Mass. And we're not allowed to rebel against the nations of the world. We're supposed to humbly wait in exile until this happens. And one of the times it says, "B'tzvois ba'alas asada," I'm making you swear by the deer and the antelope of the field. And the Talmud asks, why does God make us swear by the deer and the antelope? And the answer is, if you keep these oaths and you wait patiently in exile, good. And if not, ani matir b'sarchem, k'tzvois ba'alas asada, I'm going to let loose, set free. Rashi says lashon hefker. your flesh, like the deer and the antelope of the field, are ownerless, and any hunter can come and hunt deer and antelope. It's not like a sheep or a goat that belongs to somebody. We're usually called God's sheep, his flock. God is our shepherd. And so if we are humble in exile, we're God's sheep, and he is our shepherd. But if we go and try to take over the Holy Land, or even think about start a movement like that, and remember that when did that movement start? In the 1890s. God says, I'm going to let your flesh be open and free to the hunters, like the deer and the antelope of the field. Meaning, what happened after the 1890s? The 1930s and 40s, the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were killed. Why? After Herzl's movement began in the 1890s. Fulfilling the prophecy that if you try to fight against God's decree of exile, you're going to cause anti-Semitism. And ever since then, the link between political anti-Zionism, I don't mean there's religious anti-Zionism and political anti-Zionism. I'm not saying that the Palestinians are not anti-Semites. I'm not saying that Ilhan Omar is not an anti-Semite. She clearly is. But to me, she's an anti-Semite. I don't like the term anti-Semite. I prefer Judeophobe. Just like they talk about Islamophobia, we should speak of Judeophobia, because Judaism is a religion, not a race. Just like Islam is a religion, not a race. It's more obvious in Islam because they're much more open to receive converts. But we should be too. It's a fault of the Jews, and that comes from Zionism. Before the Zionist movement, it was much easier to convert to Judaism. Not as many people were interested in it. Today, a lot of people are interested in it, but the Zionists try to make it hard. Oh, I should park back here because I'm leaving late. The Zionist chief rabbis, they make it hard. They make it. They want to make it hard to convert because they're racist, and like the UN said, Zionism is racism. But that's not authentic Judaism. Authentic Judaism is, look what the Talmud says about conversion to Judaism. It's not supposed to take 3 years. Not supposed to even take 6 months. It's supposed to take, if someone's already circumcised, or if it's a woman, it should take a day. And if it's a man and he has to be circumcised, so however long, a couple of weeks it takes for circumcision to heal, and then he goes to the mikveh, and that's what's supposed to be. It's supposed to take 1,000,000 years. Where'd that idea come from? That's not Judaism. It comes from the Zionist heresy and racism. So pretty much that's what there's a lot more to this, but again, I'm thankful that there are Christians who want to be our friends. I don't have any problem with that. I'm very, but they have to understand from a biblical perspective. What did Jeremiah say? Don't listen to these false prophets who say, let's go back to the Holy Land. Jeremiah said, wait patiently in exile for 70 years. We don't have a number of 70 years. We're just told, wait. And then, and so we're supposed, meaning wait for the Messiah, and don't listen to these false prophets. And there's no question that Ben Gurion and Herzl were false prophets. So let's be good, pious Jews who keep the Sabbath, keep kosher if you're Jewish, keep the laws of the mikveh, things like that, and do what we're supposed to do instead of throwing it all away and replacing our holy Jewish identity with a heretical atheist Marxist ideology of Zionism. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll be in touch.